So what does it mean if your professor is an instructor, an assistant professor, or an associate professor? And what the heck should you call them? I am Dr. Brenda Whitehead here with the Prof Chat channel, and today we are talking academic titles. So academic titles can be really confusing, especially if you are the first in your family to go to college like I was. And that confusion can cause stress. So let's clear things up. First, you might have a lab instructor or a TA. TA stands for teaching assistant. Now, here we're usually talking about an upper level undergraduate, so that means they are still in the process of earning that 4-year bachelor's degree, and their primary job is to help or assist the primary professor of the course. So sometimes TAs help with grading, sometimes they run study sessions, other times they might actually hold some office hours. They're generally just meant to be extra hands for that professor. A lab instructor TA is usually one that is assigned to a specific group of students within a larger lecture class. So in this case, the main professor gives the lectures to the large hundreds of students class, and then the students gather in smaller groups of say 15, 30, 50 to do more applied exercises with their lab TA. Now, in both cases, the traditional kind of assistant TA and that lab TA, there is a primary professor in charge. So if the TA isn't able to answer your questions or isn't available for some reason, it is okay to go to that primary professor with questions about the class. Now, a quick aside here, if you get the chance to help a professor as a TA, definitely do it. It is a great opportunity to make connections, learn the material even better, and help your fellow student. And getting paid doesn't hurt either. If you want to know more about making great connections with profs and how that can get you great recommendation letters, check out the video right above. So beyond the TA, you might have a graduate instructor or an instructor of record. Here, we're usually talking about a student who has earned their bachelor's degree, that 4-year degree, and is now pursuing a graduate degree, a master's or a doctorate. Now, in many cases, graduate students have to teach classes as part of their graduate school funding package. This means that if you are getting a graduate student instructor in their first or second year, they are likely still learning the ropes of the whole professor thing. They're still learning how to teach, how to grade, and how to communicate with students. So keep that in mind and extend a little bit of extra grace when you know you might have a graduate student instructor. Now, these graduate student instructors usually are fully in charge of the class, meaning they are doing all the teaching, the grading, etc. They usually do still have a supervising full-time faculty member who is just making sure that the class is covering what it needs to cover and is there to help out if any sticky situations arise. So what this means is that you do need to go to your graduate student instructor with your main questions for the class, as you would any other professor. If, however, the graduate student instructor isn't sure how to help you, then it could be appropriate to talk with that supervising professor, but just do this really sparingly. For minor things, just try to be patient with the instructor. They're doing the best they can, and they are still learning how to do that whole professor thing. Next, we have adjunct professors, or sometimes called contract professors. Now, if you hear the term adjunct professor, it just means that the instructor doesn't have a permanent position at the university. Instead, they work on a contract basis to teach a certain number of courses each term. Adjunct professors do sometimes teach full-time with 3 or 4 courses per semester, for example, but other times they actually have another full-time job somewhere else off campus, not teaching, and then they come in and teach 1 or 2 courses on campus a year as part of their specialty. This is often seen in applied positions. So you might have a police detective teaching a forensics course, for example. And these folks are extremely valuable because they bring real-world experience into the classroom and can provide some great connections and context for some of the textbook stuff that you are reading about. Now, one primary difference you may observe between adjunct professors and more permanent professors is that adjunct professors may not have office space on campus, or if they do, it may be in a more shared space where they are in an office with another adjunct professor. And this mainly means that you need to pay extra special attention to the office hours listed on the syllabus so that you know exactly when they will be on campus and when you might be able to meet with them. This may also mean you need to do more of your communication with that professor over email just because they're not on campus as much. Now, adjunct professors are very important in universities. They teach a lot of the classes that you need to take for your degree. So it's really important to note that although adjunct professors may not be full-time professors or permanent professors, they are fully professors and they need to be extended the same respect and courtesy as any other professor you may have on campus. All right, next up, we have the different ranks of full-time professors. First up is the assistant professor rank. Now, first things first, assistant professors are not assistants. In professor world, there is something called tenure, which is basically the university saying that this professor has proved themselves valuable in some way and have therefore earned a permanent position at the university. Tenure basically guarantees you a job until retirement with a few exceptions. It's very hard for a university to fire a professor once they have earned tenure. So this is a big deal. This might sound strange, this idea of tenure, of a permanent job, but the idea is that by removing the fear of being fired, tenure frees professors, who are also usually researchers, to do the research and communicate the findings that some might find controversial. So tenure is meant to protect what's called academic freedom. Understanding tenure is important because in most cases, the title assistant professor indicates that the person has not yet earned tenure. So it indicates they are still in that trial period where they need to prove themselves in order to be awarded tenure. The bottom line here, assistant professors are real, full-time professors, usually with completed PhD or doctoral level degrees, and they are in charge of all of their classes. They are not assisting a more senior professor, and they are doing the absolute best they can to prove that they are excellent teachers and excellent researchers so that they can earn tenure and keep their job, keep helping students like you. So the next rank here, associate professor. Now that we understand tenure, this title is easy to understand. If an assistant professor is successful at proving themselves during their pre-tenure years, they are awarded tenure by their university, and usually that comes with the promotion to the associate professor rank. So the main difference between assistant professors and associate professors is that the associate professor has a permanent job. They have earned that tenure, and they also have more experience. They have at least 5 years of teaching under their belt. All right, so what comes next? Full professor. Now, not every professor will climb to this top professor rank, but those that continue establishing themselves as an authority in their research field and who demonstrate continued excellence in teaching are promoted to full professor. This mainly means that the professor is more senior, they have lots of experience, and they also may not be teaching as many classes as those at the assistant or associate professor ranks. A final one I want to touch on is the title of Emeritus Professor. Now, I'm mentioning this one because you might see this title if you're scrolling through the faculty list, for example, on your university's website. Now, an emeritus professor is a retired professor. They're not actively teaching classes, but they are still maintaining some connection to the university and to their profession. So now that we have some understanding of what these different professor ranks and positions might look like and how they're different and similar, let's talk about some things to keep in mind when addressing your instructor or your professor. First, pay attention. Most instructors very clearly state how to address them in the syllabus or in the first day of class. So I always say, hey, everybody, I am Dr. Whitehead, Professor Whitehead. You can just call me Professor. If you forget my name, that's fine. And that way, students always know how they can address me, whether that's in person, whether that's in email. I've cleared it up and removed that stress that comes when they're wondering, oh, how should I address this email? Now, sometimes how you address a professor can depend on the degree they have. Every university has different norms on this. So I've worked in some places where if the professor has a doctorate, they're called Dr. X. And if the professor has a master's degree, they're called Professor X. And there's a very clear divide. Other places, everyone is just professor. Other places, professors just go by their first names. Know your institution's norms. And if you don't already, maybe you haven't been on campus yet, you're getting ready to head to your first year in the fall, don't worry about this. It will become very clear within those first few classes what those norms are, and you can hit the ground running at that point. If it's not clear, or you're not sure, regardless of rank or position or degree, just say professor. But avoid Mr. X or Mrs. X, since that ignores the person's degree, and it can be especially problematic for female professors for a number of reasons. Now, the bottom line here, when addressing instructors, regardless of rank or title, please be respectful and professional. If you are doing that, you do not need to worry. Professors, instructors, they're people too. They just want you to feel comfortable communicating with them. That's it. You now have a better understanding of professor and instructor titles and ranks, and tips for how to make sure you are addressing and communicating with your professor in that respectful and professional way. Now, if you're interested in more new to college content, check out these videos on the screen. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see y'all next time.